Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Ella McCann, and I am Manager, External Relations and Strategic Partnerships at the Baumhart Center. The Baumhart Center for Social Enterprise and Responsibility sits at the intersection of purpose and profit, preparing the next generation of leaders to tackle society's most pressing challenges. We host events and leadership development opportunities through our center, including this partnership with United Way, as well as the Responsible Business Leaders Program. You can learn more on our website, luc.edu/Baumhart Center. We also offer an MBA through the Quinlan School of Business at Loyola University Chicago. This MBA offers students the chance to earn a business degree that is designed to prepare them to work in the spaces of diversity, equity, inclusion, racial justice, ESG, and more in the fields that they work in. We're excited that one of our scholars, Kemena Brooks, is also featured on the panel this morning. We're thrilled to bring the Neighborhood Exchange event back this year in our partnership with United Way. Last year, we welcomed folks through breakfasts to highlight the work happening in our communities. We will continue this series this year with quarterly events. And though we'd love to be in person with everyone, we hope that today's event helps you learn more about the connections between human services and economic development and the importance of the work that each of these organizations is doing. We hope that we can see everyone back in person soon. We have an amazing lineup of speakers here today, and we want to make sure that you get the most out of the event. So we ask that you make sure that your video is set to side-by-side speaker view. You can do this by clicking View in the top right of your screen and selecting side-by-side speaker view. Thank you all again for joining us. Enjoy the conversation.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ella, for that introduction. I'm Kimberlee Guenther, the Chief Impact Officer at United Way of Metro Chicago, and I am delighted to be here this morning to moderate this panel. We have some wonderful community leaders with us this morning who are reimagining community development. So when people think about economic development in communities, often the first reaction is that it will lead to residents being displaced, which is a very valid fear. But what if economic development wasn't just about transforming the businesses and housing and the economic landscape of the community, but also focused on the people who live there? If we think about healthy, supportive communities, economic development through public and private investment is absolutely critical. It helps ensure that people have access to everything that they need to lead healthy, happy lives. Things like nutritious food, good preventive health care, living wage jobs, safe, stable, affordable housing, good schools, places to shop and play, really you name it. But the reason why people are pushed out into other communities is that often residents are excluded from planning and investment that shapes their neighborhood's future. It takes place with limited community input, and there can be a disconnect between development that's happening in communities and direct services. So while there might be great workforce development programs in a community, they may not focus on the types of jobs that are becoming available. People might have trauma that isn't addressed that can create very real barriers. Or perhaps, in addition to the changes in affordability, the community that's taking shape doesn't look or feel like it's for them. And this type of development rarely creates opportunities for the residents that currently live there to generate their own wealth. But what if we paired human services with economic development? What would the world look like if we invested in people in concert with community instead of these separate but parallel paths that we're usually on? And really, how can we ensure that we are leading with residents' priorities, not those of external stakeholders? All of our panelists today are leading initiatives that do just that. And for an example, here's a brief video that shows how the Greater Auburn Gresham Development Corporation is doing just that.
Even vacant lots and vacant buildings, I don't see them just as, derelict or vacant. I see them as opportunities. Auburn Gresham and the Southside communities really deserve what any other community wants to have. And that's opportunities, choice, and access. And that's really what Greater Auburn Gresham Development Corporation is working to do. We bring together families in the community, kids in the community, seniors in the community, and I don't think there's anything that we as a community cannot attain if we work together.
Greater Auburn Gresham They are the community. They really are. They're boots on the ground, a variety of different services for all ages.
From mental health to financial workshops.
We have about 6 local school partners now.
GADC did a good job of bringing in a lot of businesses, things that we could use to help our youth, working very well with the seniors.
Our COVID response team has been providing food for 1,000 families.
We are called the Urban Green Team. Landscapers, beautifying the community. This is what we do.
They involve the community in all their decisions. They have all these meetings and they listen to the community.
GAGBC is family to me. They help me a lot in every type of way. Love. That's what they are.
So where you're born in our city today shapes your access to opportunity. Your zip code can determine how long you're gonna live, how much money you're gonna earn, and what kind of education you're gonna get. And the gaps between neighborhoods are enormous. And that shouldn't be the case. That can't be the case. And so that's what our work in the neighborhood networks is all about. How do we change those odds for children and families all across our region? Ultimately, the community knows best what it needs and what it wants to see for its future. And so instead of coming with a prescribed plan where we say, here's what needs to happen next, we instead work with the community, help build up that community plan, and help really respond to them based on their vision for what success looks like. So that means in Austin, it might look a little bit different than it does in Auburn Gresham, but ultimately it's about how do we build successful communities neighborhood by neighborhood that are led by neighborhood residents themselves. Every time I'm in Auburn Gresham, I get energized. Carlos and his team have been phenomenal leaders to help create and now implement a vision for this community. The work that they are doing in this community is simply amazing.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, how are you? I love the snow. We've started from a place of great need. Let me grab my coffee. When I took the helm as executive director back in 2003, I had a very large staff of one. It was myself, and bringing volunteers who were from the community who have now transitioned to full-time staffers. They're here to stay, and they are here to revitalize our community. We created the 79th Street Renaissance Festival, what has become an iconic Southside community event. More than 25,000 people coming together, and in 15 consecutive years, we've never had one violent crime, not one fight, not one incident, and it's just something to be really, really, really proud of. Auburn Gresham Healthy Lifestyle Hub is under construction. This 4-story, 60,000 square foot building will have 100 to 150 living wage jobs right here. This direction will be a grand lobby. If you look over to the right, there will be a pharmacy that will be located here. Over in this section will be a Black-owned sit-down restaurant. This will be an immediate care center, 6 dental exam rooms. This building will be a beacon for economic development that's happening here in Auburn Gresham. We're also working with elected officials and Metra to build a brand new Metra station right at 79th and Low. The train station is due to open later in 2022, which is the same year that the Healthy Lifestyle Hub will open. And my God, what a difference that's going to make. Auburn Gresham was the winner of the Chicago Prize. We took a concept of investing in a for-profit venture, an anaerobic digester, and a 9-acre urban farm that will go alongside that digester. So what does that mean? That means our 5 pillars as an organization: education and youth development, housing and senior services, health and wellness, economic development, community engagement. We are making a difference here in Auburn Gresham. United Way is with us to rebuild our community. not just in financial resources, but bringing experts from corporate partners. The staff of United Way comes out to our food distribution to do, volunteer engagement. It's deep partnership support. The future is really bright for Auburn Gresham, and I'm excited to be a part of that.
I'm inspired every time I see that video, and we are fortunate this morning to be joined by Carlos Nelson, the Executive Director of the Greater Auburn Gresham Development Corporation. Good morning, Carlos. Joining him on the panel this morning, we have Kemena Brooks, who is the Senior Project Manager of Development at the Community Builders, and Steve Hamman, who is the President of Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Illinois. Good morning and welcome. So we're going to start with a couple of questions for our panels, but at the end of this, we're going to have plenty of time for Q&A. So as we go through this conversation, please feel free to enter questions into the chat. But we're going to start with Carlos and Kemena. Both of you work at the neighborhood level. You're providing direct services to community residents, but you're also working on housing or with small businesses to change the landscape and create new opportunities. What's the goal of this integrated approach for each of your organizations, and what are some of the innovative projects that are bringing this to life?
Well, good morning, all. Carlos Nelson, thank you for having me here today, Kimberlee and Sean and the United team. I'm excited to be here this morning. I'd like to say that, when GAGDC started as an organization years ago, there was a mission with one singular focus, and that was economic development, supporting small businesses. And when I joined the organization, first as a volunteer and then as executive director in 2003, I quickly realized early on that in order for us to advance in our communities, we had to develop the human capital within our communities. That was essential to address many of the ills that have plagued South Side and West Side communities. As you saw in the video, we have 5 pillars or focal areas that really were born of a community engagement plan, a quality of life plan, and engaging more than 1,500 residents. In fact, the theme I hope that you'll notice in that video is really community engagement and wealth generation. So those 5 pillars: economic development, education and youth development, health and wellness, housing and senior services, all built on a foundation of community engagement. As it relates to innovation and ideation, I would say that our education and youth development pillar is one that really oozes of creativity, knowing that education is a passport to prosperity. So lifelong learning. We created a program called Auburn Gresham Gold, a community-driven education plan in which we focused on extended day learning, after-school programming, math and reading literacy summer enrichment program, a bi-weekly parent engagement programs. We even, through a partnership with Illinois State University, working to create high-quality, culturally competent urban educators right within our community and the schools in our community. All that work is steeped in family supports and tying health and wellness. Recognizing that we needed to meet people where they were, education isn't the answer for everyone, but we needed to create pipeline programs. So there's a burgeoning community health worker pipeline programming, which allows residents to access and have an inroads into the health and wellness field. And also another program I'm really excited about, and sorry to be so long-winded, is our Auburn Gresham Local Workforce Development Program, in which we're training residents from the community on asbestos remediation and environmental remediation work, which then transfers them into $40, $50, $60 a year jobs. It's really about investing in the people and wealth generation.
Great, thanks, Carlos. And how about Kemena? What's the Community Builders doing?
Yes, thank you for that question and for the opportunity to participate on this panel today. As Kimberlee shared, my name is Kemena Brooks. I'm a senior project manager with the Community Builders, and I'm also a part of the Baumhart Scholars Program. But TCB, we are a national mission-based nonprofit firm with offices in Chicago and other Midwest and East Coast cities. Our bread and butter is mixed income housing and community development. We're also a vertically integrated firm that provides property management services. But truly what we are most proud about is the work that we do through our community life. Our community life is a place-based model that uses stable housing as a platform for residents and neighborhoods to achieve success. One key piece of community life is this upfront acknowledgement that residents and the communities in which we serve are truly our greatest assets. And so we co-create with our residents and with communities to understand their needs and how we can address them. We go out and seek partnerships that allow us to deliver programs, allow us to deliver services, and even community developments that meet the goals and the needs of the communities in which we work. Across Chicagoland neighborhoods, we are actively working. There are several projects that we have brought to life and are still actively bringing to life that address physical, economic, and social needs of its residents. One example, I'll highlight kind of a couple of examples in neighborhoods in which we're working, but one example is that of our earliest development community in Chicago called Oakwood Shores, which is in the Bronzeville neighborhood. We've been there for 2 decades now, and to date have developed nearly 1,000 homes, a park district field house, health center, and a community center. And we don't just build and leave. We don't just build and walk away. We have community life staff that work day to day in Oakwood Shores with our residents on their collective and individual goals. We have a resident advisory group that meets monthly, and they identify concerns in the community, and they actually come up with solutions on how to address them. We offer programs focused on healthy eating. We have a physician and chef, he wears multiple hats, that shows our residents how to prepare healthy food options. We host financial literacy classes and job readiness programs. One of the individual goals for some residents at Oakwood Shores has been home ownership. And since one of our next phases of development in the community is developing for sale housing, our community life staff is already actively working with those residents interested in owning homes to set goals around financial management and savings for a down payment. And, the goal really is to transition those families interested in owning a home from the rentals at Oakwood Shores into for sale, so that they can really be a part of the community long term. Another project that comes to mind is in the West Garfield Park neighborhood. TCB, we were invited in the community 2 years ago. And at that time, we were sitting around a table, TCB, Rush, and 3 community organizations that have been working in the neighborhood to address factors that are contributing to West Garfield Park having one of the lowest life expectancies in the city. Fast forward to today, that was 2 years ago, but fast forward to today, there is now a formal nonprofit collaborative called Garfield Park Right to Wellness Collaborative that has over 10 community-based organizations and now has a full-time director, a mission, and initiatives focus on addressing the social determinants of health in the community. We were there at the forefront as part of the founding organizations, but it's just truly been essential to have community organizations come together as part of a collaborative. We're now working with the community on plans to develop a community-led recreation and wellness hub. So Carlos, I'll be talking to you. But the hub will provide access to physical and mental health care, spaces for community programs, financial literacy, and job opportunities. This particular example is how our organization is bringing its development and community life experience into a neighborhood. But truly, the needs and ideas are being driven by the local health partners, as well as, more importantly, the local community. Thank you.
That's great. And I love that both of you are really building on the assets of the community, starting with the people that live there. Those are really kind of the strongest assets in our neighborhoods. But turning to Steve, you're the president of a big company that is getting involved at the local level, partnering with communities to increase access to healthcare. Why is it important for your company to engage this way? And what can other corporations learn from Blue Cross and Blue Shield?
Sure. Thanks for the question, Kimberlee, and also extending my thanks to Sean and everyone at United Way for the opportunity to participate and share on the panel this morning. I would start by saying Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois has a long-standing record of working to improve health outcomes and advancing health equity for our more than 8 million members across our state. And as part of our mission, we also work hard to improve the health and wellness of communities across the state of Illinois. And that's just really part of the fabric here. But let me let you into a little secret. Healthcare costs are high. So in addition to what we do in working with the supply side of healthcare, and that's working with hospitals and physicians, we're also working on the demand side of healthcare, people's health and well-being. So it's important to understand that your health and life expectancy, just as Sean mentioned in the Auburn and Gresham video earlier, your life expectancy is largely driven more by your zip code than your genetic code. So our approach is really focused on addressing the social determinants of health. So not just access to quality healthcare, but also access to affordable housing, stable employment, access to healthy food, reliable transportation, a safe environment, education, all the components, and certainly similar to the framework you heard earlier, all important elements that drive health and well-being. So one example of that is our continued investment in Chicago South and West sides. A year ago, August in 2020, we joined the Morgan Park community on the South Side by opening a 130,000 square foot employee workspace and community center, which was transformed from an old abandoned retail store into a bright, light-filled modern space for up to 500 new employees with living wages. So from our standpoint, it's important to meet people where they are. So besides Morgan Park, we now have what's called Blue Door neighborhood centers also in South Lawndale and Pullman, where they host hundreds of no-cost programs and activities each year focused on the physical, mental, and social health that are open to the public, not just Blue Cross members. And that's important to us. Some of the programming includes fitness demonstrations, things like farmers markets, senior focused events, family activities like block parties, educational resources, and hosting community organizations. And that's really the point. We can't do this alone. Just like Kemena mentioned, we're a convener with so many great community resources. And that, from our community engagement team that supports, these community health investments through very strategic partnerships with nonprofit organizations, the boots on the ground. And that helps with health education outreach, employee engagement through volunteerism. And we have a mobile caravan program that's focused on kind of key health screenings and immunizations. And in conjunction with those Blue Door neighborhood centers that offer no-cost health and wellness programs, both on-site and through the pandemic, certainly virtually. And now we're starting to see how those efforts can lead to a multiplier effect for that maximum collaborative impact. So it's really, again, kind of core to who we've always have been. But as we look at new ways to reach and engage people in their health and well-being, we're really seeing the impacts of some of these investments.
Thank you, Steve. That is a really powerful example of how companies can engage differently. I think we often think about corporations and their philanthropic dollars and how they're supporting community-based organizations. But this example really shows the opportunity for companies to partner really intentionally with community organizations and become deeply rooted in the work of community. And I think there's just a ton of potential in this city, in neighborhoods across the city, to engage in this type of work. So all three of you have been doing this work for quite a while. I know GAGDC and TCB have been at this for 20 years. Blue Cross Blue Shield has been working on this for some time, but in a lot of ways, it feels like a new approach or like it's gaining momentum. And we know that it's not easy to make a departure from the usual way of doing things. So what are some of the challenges that you've experienced as you've rolled out these programs? And we're thinking from funders, from community residents, your partners, or even from within your own organizations.
Okay, I guess I'll take the first stab at that. You know, Kimberlee, you're so right. I mean, this is a shift, a paradigm shift, a movement that we are a part of, all a part of here. Historically, economic development efforts in our communities have been really extractive in nature, which is obviously a critical problem. Extracting from the land, extracting our human capital, extraction from the local economy. All of these ingredients have led to, when there is economic development movement in Black and Brown communities, those have led to gentrification. Exclusivity is a curse. And so what we are doing is really incorporating all of our work, and it sounds like Kemena and Steve and similar organizations are doing the same thing, of being community driven, being people driven, people at the center of the discussions, people at the table. For GAGDC, all of our community development work, economic development work, really involves community equity, community ownership. The model of community ownership is so essential. You know, Steve and Blue Cross Blue Shield, building a site in Morgan Park, which which supports the Southland and the South Side as well, allows residents from those challenged communities to have living wage job opportunities, to have benefits, and so that really kind of represents the work that GAGDC does. You saw the Healthy Lifestyle Hub on the video. You saw the anaerobic digester. The key aspect there is those catalytic projects are owned by and led by people of color, people from the community, and will allow us to generate wealth, which will sustain our work in the future.
I'll jump in and echo, everything that Carlos said, and to add to some additional points. I can't remember where I read this quote, but it said, if you have seen one neighborhood, you have only seen that one neighborhood, and meaning no neighborhood is alike. And we work in 11 neighborhoods in the city, plus surrounding areas, and none of them are alike. Therefore, we are just, constantly being faced with different challenges, or even called lessons learned. We're continuously working to address different factors across neighborhoods. However, going to your point, Kimberlee, funding is certainly one sort of constant challenge that we're being faced with. To support the work of our community life staff, we do significant fundraising. However, often our organization is sometimes perceived as being too large or being associated with developing housing and not providing the necessary services that go along with truly providing the supports residents in our communities need to remain stable. And we've been fortunate through the work of our community life leader in the Chicago office, Dr. Rose Mabwa, to have built strong partnerships with organizations that offer impactful services to residents. But even still, funding is certainly important in each of the communities in which we work. A second factor I'll say is, I would more consider maybe a lesson learned is really being, time and patience. It's, we're asking people that may have never been given the opportunity to co-create on a program, on an initiative, or even on a community development to go out and share their ideas. You don't just jump right in and start saying, okay, create. There's truly a time period where you spend trust building and an education period, especially in communities that have been, for so long underserved and are now seeing and receiving investment. One example in the West Garfield Park neighborhood, it's just been a credible journey to see community activists over the last couple of years really take the wheel and drive their community in a new direction. And we're truly excited about that.
Yeah, I certainly agree with a lot of what Kemena just said. And I would just even add that any of the challenges that we've come into, you've just got to involve the community in solving those challenges. As she mentioned, each of those neighborhoods has a different set of needs and environment, and you can't make the assumptions about certain neighborhoods. So it's not like Blue Cross coming into a community and saying, hey, we've looked at our data, and it's more of an understanding of the thoughts and feelings of the people who live in that community. They know the challenges they are facing and what support's needed to make health improvements and health changes. Since so much good work is happening at the community level, and we want to bolster and support that work and take it to the next level. So while quantitative data is important, qualitative data, through community engagement sessions and surveying allows us to better identify and address those community needs. So for example, before we opened our neighborhood centers, we hosted community listening sessions to learn what the community felt they needed to support better health outcomes, and certainly help the residents on their healthcare journey. And even the feedback with regard to the artwork on the walls. We don't want to make those assumptions in some ivory tower way. We're asking those in the community, and it's interesting to see just how different they are between those 3 different neighborhoods. And so the community really provided the feedback on these services to include things like youth programming. What's the best way to engage youth in those communities? And again, very different by each of those different areas. And whether it's that youth programming or mental health resources, and again, back to the access to healthy, affordable food, and certainly the employment opportunities. So we're certainly learning and adapting from that feedback and not making the assumptions. And that's critically important for us to just get over any of those challenges that we're faced with.
That's great. All of you bring up the importance of co-creation versus consultation. And that raises issues of patience and commitment. It takes a lot of time to do this kind of work. And we don't always see the results that people want to see overnight. It is a long game. It is about partnering with community. It's about building people's capacity to engage in a different way and really having the patience and commitment to see it through. So I commend all of you for doing that work, engaging residents in that way. At United Way, we think about our neighborhood network model and how we do that, how we even think about providing stipends for community residents and community leaders to honor their time and participation in this type of work. And it's a really exciting shift, and I hope something that people will see the value in the long-term commitment to this model. But each of you occupies a very specific role in community transformation. What do you think is the best way to work collaboratively across sectors, and what advice do you have for people in the audience who might want to get involved with this type of work?
Well, Kemena certainly mentioned, trust is essential. I would also recommend, trust that community-based organizations and the leaders in our communities are the experts. We know what it takes for our communities to rebuild. Be diligent. Be diligent in your support, whether it's through financial support or volunteer support. Be diligent in helping to build the capacity of our residents, of our organization's residents in our community. I would also say that, there's been this long-standing reluctance, as both Steve and Kemena mentioned, and yourself as well, Kimberlee, a reluctance to and an unwillingness to support innovation. And, recognizing once again that community leaders who have our fingers on the pulse of our communities, who are deeply engaged in the residents or with the residents in our communities, know what it takes to make movements occur. And so be diligent, trust that our organizations, leaders like Kemena, leaders like myself, and I mean, I could just go down a list of leaders that service Black and brown neighborhoods on the south side of Chicago, support us, do what it takes to make certain that our work is financially supported, as well as supported through your in-kind support as well.
Carlos said it great and really summed up a great response there. I also think one thing, it's important to recognize that While groups are coming together to collaborate, each also still has its own separate organizational priorities and goals that it's seeking to address. You know, we're working in communities where there are 10, 12, 15 organizations that are coming together that have all, you know, sort of separately been doing, have separately been focused in different areas and in that community and sort of coming together collectively around a common goal. But, you know, organizations don't just stop serving their clients. It's truly important to work collaboratively, but also just as important to make time for organizations to continue to advance their goals as well. So many organizations that we work with are nonprofit or small businesses that are already at capacity, and working collaboratively, across sectors can really be an added responsibility despite its benefits. So, you know, it's certainly important to be cognizant of that. And we really try to be and try to support the community organizations and their goals as we're coming in and working with them to advance sort of a common goal in the community.
Yeah, I would say completely agree, and not to sound redundant, but certainly going back to, you know, involving, you know, the community. And as Kemena just said, you know, when you work across, you know, certain sectors, you know, there are different priorities of each of those organizations you're working with. But so long as you have that, you know, a kind of agreed upon vision of what you're trying to work and strive for, that's certainly, you know, very, very helpful and foundational to making it successful. And an example of that, for example, is really, you know, that we collaborate and really host local community organizations. I said, you know, we can't do it all, and we're leaning heavily on these community resources. And, you know, for example, for, you know, hiring the team or starting the hiring the team in Morgan Park, we collaborated with a number of different organizations like Phalanx Family Services, Skills for Chicagoland's Future, Chicago Cook Workforce, IDS, and even Moraine Valley College, who assisted with our upskilling events, where we assisted candidates with resume review, interview skills, and, you know, even gave them an overview of our hiring process and what to expect. So working together, because we really wanted to and have been, you know, great success in hiring from the neighborhood. And it's that really effective collaboration that spans both public, private, and even the nonprofit sector that requires, you know, the team to understand different things like communication styles and organizational framework of each of those sectors that you're trying to work across. And then lastly, and hopefully not sounding too gratuitous, but, you know, leaning into, you know, trustworthy organizations like United Way is an important, you know, cross-sector collaboration, especially when, you know, distributing, you know, funds, you know, whether it's emergency funding to support frontline services and workers, and or just the basic needs and access to care for individuals and families. So again, it's, you know, super important to be plugged in, and as you heard from, you know, certainly all three of us around the importance of trust and as a foundational layer.
That's great. Hearing from all of you, your different perspectives about how collaboration is key, but also really highlighting the need to find the balance between that collaborative effort and that shared vision and the strengths and goals of each individual organization. That can be a really difficult process to navigate as coalitions are starting. And I know, Kemena, working in West Garfield Park, I'm sure you've seen that really intensely over the last 2 years. So I'm so glad that you all raised that point that, you know, we are all committed to an end goal. And at the end of the day, we also have to think about the needs of our individual organizations. And that's an ongoing negotiation. And I think all of you are doing that phenomenally well in a difficult landscape. But we are going to turn to a couple of questions from our audience. And again, if there are any other questions, please feel free to put them into the chat. But question number one, we have a nice shout out for GAGDC and Carlos. But then the question to the rest of us is if we have any partnerships and plans for the South Chicago community. And I can start with that because United Way does have a neighborhood network within the South Chicago community. We have been partnering with Clarice and Associates for the last couple of years, really thinking about trauma and mental health in that community, but also looking at the incredible economic development work that they are doing. But Steve and Kemena, are there any plans for South Chicago?
Yes, I would say broadly, and obviously we talked a little bit on the, you know, south and west sides of Chicago, but our work also with, I mentioned early in the conversation around the supply side. So working with hospitals and physicians, and we do know certainly with a lot of the data that we have and other community data around where there are healthcare deserts, primary care deserts. And so working very closely with the providers, certainly on the south side and west side for that matter, around what is the opportunities around the transformation of care delivery. So working with the state that does have a considerable amount of funding toward that end. But again, this is not the work of one organization, one hospital, one safety net hospital, one federally qualified health center is not going to be able to come up with that solution. It's really working together to do that. So we are actively involved with a number of those organizations around new and innovative ways to reach people and to create those important access to quality healthcare. But again, as we kind of mentioned earlier, which is it's not just the supply side, it's also the demand side. So how do we provide those resources and work with community organizations around those social determinants of health, driving those factors around affordable housing and access to healthy food and things like that. And again, not one organization can solve for it. So working together is really the path to do that. So again, lots of work in flight as we speak on the south side today.
And TCB, we are working on the south and west sides of Chicago as well. And I think if your question is around the South Chicago neighborhood specifically, we currently are not yet in the South Chicago neighborhood. However, we are certainly seeking opportunities where we can not only bring our investment around development, but bring it, more importantly, our investment around community life into neighborhoods. So, we've certainly discussed and know that South Chicago neighborhood has, such a rich history. And if there are opportunities for TCB to come into the community and come and work with the neighborhood and stakeholders in the neighborhood, if there are opportunities, we certainly would explore those opportunities in the South Chicago neighborhood specifically.
Great, thank you. Moving on to the next question. How are each of you using the LISC quality of life plans that have been developed over the last, I think the first one was in 2003. So how do you use those in your work?
Okay, I guess I'll take that one. So yeah, absolutely. So 2003, and it's kind of a throwback, the original New Communities program way back then under Andy Mooney, and then subsequently Auburn, Gresham, and a few other communities had another round of quality of life planning sessions in 2016, 2017. And I will tell you, for us, those quality of life plans are the blueprints of the work that we do. Those plans are really the voices of the community. The really cool thing about the multiple planning processes, and I know Austin Coming Together recently, a few years back, completed one, and there are other organizations or communities undergoing them now, is that each and every participant in the planning process, in the visioning process, in the creation of these strategies and tasks, whether you are an elected official, whether you are an owner of a Fortune 500 company, or a senior, or a child, each and every person, their voice has an equal weight at the table, equal seat at the table. And that's the cool thing about those plans. And so it is certainly not a top-down approach. It's a ground-up approach to doing planning for our communities. So in Auburn, Gresham, some of the projects that you saw or heard in the video, for instance, the metro station that's coming to 79th Street, the Rock Island line, was a part of the original 2003 through 2005 quality of life planning process. It's been a long, arduous, sometimes it feels like a lifelong effort to make that happen. But thanks to State Senator Jackie Collins and and Metro, and of course the power of the community. We'll see it happen in 2023. The Healthy Hub was born out of the quality of life plan here in Auburn, Gresham. It took a long time. It took pain and suffering. It took the first COVID-related death in the city of Chicago, which happened in Auburn, Gresham. It took so many families deprived of access to health care. It took so many of those challenges for us to get to where we are. And thanks to the Pritzker Traubert Foundation, thanks to the Weinberg Foundation, obviously thanks to United Way and Chase and so many others, thanks to the city of Chicago for all rallying together with our organization, with our community to make that happen. But so many of the other things, the housing and senior services was born out of the quality of life plan, our pillar. The working with the faith-based communities. Violence, if you notice, we haven't talked a lot about the violence, of course, that we hear daily, multiple times a day in our communities. Much of our work on the progressive side, we feel that, we keep doing this progressive economic development and building wealth and engaging parents and youth through lifelong learning, while we are also working with the gangs on the street. We will begin to see those numbers begin to shift and our communities will take that rightful place. But all of that, to answer your question, all of these things are based and born out of the quality of life plans. And we meet regularly once a month as community engagement teams, as task force members to address each and every strategy in the quality of life plan.
And I'll say, we use multiple types of plans to advance our work, list quality of life plan being one, also community-led, community-driven master plans, corridor plans, they all sort of create a framework for us as a community developer to utilize to advance the work. And specifically going to the list quality of life plan, it is a competitive process. And we do with the communities pursue list quality of life plans, and we are pursuing one in West Garfield Park. We did not get selected the first time that we submitted, and West Garfield Park, the community has said we can't wait. We can't wait until the next round to start moving forward with the planning effort. So we're right now doing working with the community on a community-led corridor plan, really focused on 2 commercial corridors in the community. And then we'll go back to the list quality life plan to pursue that again. So, I definitely think planning is an essential piece of really creating a framework, as Carlos said, and a vision for the community, so that when organizations like TCB and other organizations are coming in to provide program services development, they really have that plan as a guide to influence the work that is being done in the community. And we're certainly actively working with community organizations and residents in neighborhoods to develop plans that may include the list quality of life plan and may include other types of planning efforts to create a framework and vision for the community.
And Kimberlee, before Steve responds, just a point of clarity, those quality of life plans are not the list quality of life plans. Those quality of life plans belong to the communities. Andy Mooney, Susana Vasquez, Megan Hart will all tell you that. So I would correct that. Those aren't the list quality of life plans. Those are the quality of life plans of our communities, our respective communities. And I want to give a shout out to United Way and Sean's leadership, who recognize that instead of trying to recreate the will and do something similar, yet slightly different, United Way has wholeheartedly supported those quality of life plans that have been born in our community and have been supported through LISC funding.
I would only add, similar to Kemena, these are inputs to any of the investments that we're making in these, certainly in these neighborhoods. They're foundational, certainly going back to 2013, but we don't rely only on them, but it is certainly a big input, because if we're really trying to improve people's health and wellness and their well-being, clearly, these quality of life plans are an input. It's a blueprint for us to, again, going back to not making the assumptions, but taking all the inputs from these communities before we make any kind of investments in these programs.
Great, thank you all. And thank you, Carlos, for making that point that these plans are community owned. And as United Way, and I know Liz feels this way as well, we are partners in this work with you and really helping you to implement your vision for your communities. We have about 1 to 2 minutes for a final question. So if you could each give us sort of a single sentence answer to a very meaty question of, are there ways to tap resources in nearby neighborhoods for the work that you're doing? So thinking about Hyde Park on the south side or the West Loop, how can you activate your community neighbors?
Well, for GAGDC, it's really through partnership. It's really through, and we're looking at things more regionally. So GAGDC should be supporting South Shore, the work in South Shore, should be supporting the work in the southeast side through Claretians and through Chicago Family Health Center. I mean, so, part of the problem historically have been these borders, these boundaries. And so we've got to kick in those borders and boundaries and work cohesively throughout our communities, throughout our regions, if we are going to really make a change.
Yeah, I'd certainly, Carlos, you're hitting it out the park. You're exactly right. It's about partnerships, and we certainly, while we may be based in a particular neighborhood, we are certainly leveraging partnerships throughout surrounding neighborhoods and throughout the city and nationally. And, that's an essential part of the work that we do. And, while we are based in a certain neighborhood, and there's plenty of resources in particular neighborhoods, and we do first and foremost try to tap into those resources that are in the neighborhood and really try to help elevate and drive the businesses and organizations that are already in the neighborhood. But we are certainly working in surrounding neighborhoods and working with partners and organizations in those neighborhoods adjacent. Bronzeville neighborhood that we're working in, Hyde Park, Woodlawn, they're not too far. South Loop, they're not too far, and we're definitely tapping into opportunities there, but we're really hyper focused in the communities in which we work as well.
Yeah, the only thing I 100% agree, and I would just add volunteers. Volunteers, naturally, a vital part of any community development. So we encourage and support volunteer work among our own colleagues here at Blue Cross, and certainly many of the community organizations that we collaborate with, and that we support either partially or fully by volunteers. So that expertise can help to support that collaboration and those partnerships that support that community development.
Great, thank you all. That's all we have time for, but really thank you for your leadership in communities, for your work in communities. It's amazing what you do on a daily basis, and we are so happy to be partners with all of you. And now I'm going to turn it over to Sean Garrett, the President and CEO of United Way of Metro Chicago, to close us out.
Thanks, Kimberlee, and thanks to all our panelists. I wish we could do clapping in the way we would do at events, so everyone could share their excitement and joy. But that was really cool, and we're lucky enough to get to be in some of these conversations. But one of the things that just really struck me is reflecting back during the conversation is, we often think about like the visions that we have for communities. We talk about plans. But sometimes we don't talk enough about what is actually happening. And I'll just share on a personal level, the last week, I had the opportunity to visit our friends in Austin. I was with Carlos in Auburn, Gresham. I was with our friends in Little Village. There's a lot happening, and it's not just theoretical, it's happening. There's people involved, there's companies involved, there's nonprofits and partners involved. And it's really, really cool. And it's happening because of leadership. It's happening because of partnership. It's happening because of those visions, but it's actually happening. And I hope that everyone really walks away with today with the feeling of there's things happening in our community. How do we do more? Because we have some momentum, we have some progress. Now it's how do we go faster and further and get even more done while we're getting great things to come. So today was the kind of re-kicking off of this neighborhood exchange. We hope everyone had a great time. As you'll see on the next slide, we are going to be hosting another one of these early in 2022, January 26th, where we're going to talk about the rise of community-based incubators that are helping to drive further economic development and the intersection, once again, of community and neighborhood. So thank you so much for joining us today. We had a wonderful time with all of you. Looking forward to continuing the conversation, but most importantly, continuing the great work that's taking place all across our region. So thank you all very much and have a great day.